It's been almost 2 weeks since the Canadian Food Inspection Agency slaughtered over 300 healthy ostriches in Edgewood, British Columbia. I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, and today I bring you an update on the latest with the farmers and the latest with the fight over Universal Ostrich Farms, which no longer has any ostriches. For those of you who are not familiar on this story, we have the complete background to what I said in the intro at our special website called avengetheostriches.com. But many of you, including internationally, now know about the ostriches and what Canada did to them. The answer to why is still up in the air, but how they did it has been brought into question by many. Many of you may recall Chris Dacey, the citizen journalist, who is actually still there on the farm covering some of the aftermath. Just horrific it has been, how devastated the family is as they try to dust themselves off after doing what I think was a remarkable fight, a David and Goliath type fight. They did so well, and yet the wrong thing happened. I mean, even just going out on the edge of their property there and seeing the empty pens is too much for them right now, so they're staying away from the area. But Chris Dacey caught this good moment where Katie Pasitny learns that it appears their charges had been dropped.
What day is it?
It's Miracle Monday!
So, breaking news for Miracle Monday.
Our charges were dropped.
Yeah.
I mean, I would only and could only hope so, because I know that we were expecting a pretty great turnout on Thursday, and I want to thank everybody for lining up to come to the Vernon Courthouse. But we just got notified this morning that the charges for my mom and I both have been dropped. Those charges, just to remind everybody, were getting arrested for feeding the animals that got brutally murdered on November 6th and 7th. And we were feeding the animals. We wanted to keep the routine the same. Well, their world was going to be turned upside down. And on September 22nd, the day before they arrived, we got an email asking us to feed and water the animals. So it was very contradictory, but I'm very grateful for today, and we're ready to put our armor back on, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
We're putting our armor back on, and we're ready for round 2.
Now, following that little interaction there, I spoke with Katie and got some more clarification on what's actually happened. There's still a little bit of that which is up in the air. Now, if you recall, Katie Pasitny and her mother, who is co-owner of Universal Ostrich Farms, which now has no ostriches, her name's Karen Esperson, were both arrested for feeding and caring for the ostriches, despite the CFIA sending them a letter that specifically said they could do so. The RCMP ended up arresting them, saying, no, you need to get out of the pens. And this was long before the CFIA was ready to slaughter the birds. But I received this screenshot from Katie showing that some things are still up in the air. So what I get from this, and I did run it by a criminal defense lawyer, is that what has happened is it seems as though the BC Prosecution Service has not taken up the charge, which means the prosecution service has not approved charges. And if you look here, the RCMP is saying that they have yet to lay charges, meaning charges technically could still come, although I spoke with a criminal defense lawyer who says it appears unlikely based on it getting to this stage and not happening, but who knows? And remember, the farmers were arrested for obstructing an official, and that arrest was authorized by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency itself from the Health of Animal Act. I mean, that's how much power these bureaucrats have, and of course, executed by the RCMP. So all very confusing for these farmers who were just trying to feed their birds. So the BC Prosecution Services, as it stands, has not approved those charges, which meant the farmers didn't have to show up to their hearing after everything they're going through, which was supposed to take place this week. Now, that is not the end of the fights against what's happened. I have let some people know that there seems to be protests forming across the country on this Saturday, September 22nd. You can find more about that at farmingprotestcanada.com to see if there's one in your area. And of course, Rebel News will be covering that. It's inspired by the slaughter of the ostriches, so that will all be at avengetheostriches.com. But there have also been some formal complaints filed, both criminally as well as to the CFIA directly, calling on them to have a review. So, for the rest of this interview, I'm going to throw to my talk with a Canadian businessman. His name is Sean Rickard. You might know him for his fight defending freedom against COVID tyranny in the federal courts. Well, he has filed some criminal complaints to the RCMP over what even the whistleblower we interviewed has from the culling industry has said was barbaric and inhumane. And Animal Justice, one of their animal lawyers, her name is Camille, has filed a complaint with the CFIA. Here's more info on that.
Well, I've been covering the prior to the obviously the atrocity that happened on the 6th and the 7th. I've been following the case, following what's been unfolding quite closely. But when I saw what happened with the massacre there and the clear legal violations, as far as I'm concerned, that the CFIA and RCMP sort of executed with their what they called a cull, then I've really started to dive a little deeper, put sort of the emotions aside a little bit, but just focus on the legal aspects. Mm-hmm. And I figured while I was doing that, I'd file a complaint, a formal criminal complaint, which I did on November 8th.
Yeah.
Never heard back for 2 days. So I went online, resent it again to the same address, but I also dug up some other email addresses that I also sent it to, just to see if I could get it to land on somebody's desk at least. Mm-hmm. And the reason I did it by email rather than phone is I wanted to have a paper trail. I wanted someone to respond and confirm, and I'd asked them to confirm receipt. And nobody has until today. And what is it, the 17th today? So almost a week later, still, over a week, 9 days later, that still haven't heard anything back. And from what I can understand on my X feed, other people also filed because we kind of, suggested that they do so, and they haven't heard back either. So it seems like they're avoiding getting back to people on this issue right now. I don't know if it's damage control on their end. I'm not going to speculate, but something's happening. So today I reached out to they're called the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission for the RCMP. Mm-hmm. And I found file a complaint page. This is all on my X feed as well. And I've even copied and pasted the email in here. So if other people want to send it, they can do so. And at least with this option here, it's an online web form, and you actually get a confirmation that you've submitted your complaint. So.
Absolutely. I mean, so many people are just captivated by the horror they saw take place. I felt traumatized, and I didn't want to be dramatic saying that because they weren't even my animals, and I wasn't there for 10, 11 months like some of the people there. So I can only imagine, what the farmers are feeling.
Well, I put you in touch with the industry insider, right? And you interviewed him.
Let's talk a little bit about specifically what it is you were claiming, though, some of the things that you had listed out as the issues that stood out to you.
So the criminal code violations that I have listed in my complaint are sections 445, 445.1, 446. Section 445 is injuring or endangering other animals. This section makes it an offense to willfully and without lawful excuse kill, harm, wound, poison, injure cattle, animal, dogs, birds, blah, blah. I won't go into the whole details here because we don't have time, but section 445.1 is basically causing unnecessary suffering, and there's a great deal of detail in that as well. And section 446 is causing damage or injury, neglect, abandonment. This deals with willful neglect, which would go back to when the animal, I think it was Spirit, that was sick and didn't receive medical attention or food or water. So there's three primary sections in here that
Yeah.
I've filed.
And on that note, there's the horror for the people that had to hear and witness to a certain extent. Then there's the horror that people saw from the pictures after and just the way it was set up. But you're not alone in this. I'm actually going to jump to an interview put on by CTV. A credit to them on this interview. They interviewed a lawyer with Animal Justice that's filed their own complaint. And I got to say, it's well said what this lawyer had to say.
Yeah, so we were deeply concerned to see the methods employed to kill the birds. There's the fundamental question of whether the birds should have been killed a year after they were infected. All indications are that they were very likely healthy, but the CFIA would not retest them. And those actions were further compounded by the way that they killed the birds. So they rounded nearly 400 of the ostriches up into a hay bale pen, and they employed marksmen to shoot them. Now, this is inappropriate for a number of reasons. The CFIA's own manual says it's not a good idea to shoot birds and this should only be a last resort. They point out that ostriches have very small heads. You can imagine marksmen trying to shoot such a hard, small target, especially when the birds would be terrified and running around and watching each other be shot to death, would be not an easy task and certainly not a humane one. There's indications that there were hundreds of shots and that the final round of shots wasn't heard until the next morning, which means some birds were likely alive overnight. The CFIA may have had the lawful authority to carry out this kill, but that doesn't mean that they can engage methods that are cruel when there are less cruel methods available.
So what alternative methods or actions do you think should have been taken instead?
Well, these birds are individuals, and they at least had the right to be treated as individuals when the CFIA was killing them. So the CFIA's manual suggests that one thing to do would be to hood an ostrich to calm the bird down, move the ostrich to a location, and then first administer a sedative and then a lethal dose. And that is something the CFIA itself recommends doing one by one for the birds. Perhaps they didn't want to take the time to do that because there were so many of the birds, but that's no excuse when we're talking about the pain and suffering that these individual animals would have endured. I think that shooting them in front of one another is particularly cruel. And Marcia, in the case of the notorious BC sled dog massacre, I'm sure many viewers remember that, where a man was convicted of criminal animal cruelty for killing off sled dogs who were no longer useful after a business downturn. The fact that he killed them in front of each other was an aggravating feature in his criminal conviction and sentencing. And I would say the same applies here with the ostriches. It is simply cruel.
I guess one note, just to encourage others out there reading and watching or seeing these posts should definitely consider doing the same thing and filing a formal complaint.
Now, I've gone ahead and linked the way for anybody who shares the concerns of Rickard and Animal Justice to go ahead and file their complaints to the RCMP in the written article for this report, which you can find in the description box below. And that's also where you can take action at avengetheostriches.com.